Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I trust you all had a great weekend. We had some sad news. I'll get to that in a moment. I did an interview with Jonathan Berman, who's been a Twitter friend of mine and is the author of Success in Africa. If you get a chance, do take a look. He had some interesting thoughts that he shared. Macro thoughts: China's foreign exchange reserves fell to $3.23 trillion in January from $3.33 trillion a month earlier as the central bank continued its defense of the yuan. Have a look at this image to see what kind of exponential, non-linear depletion we're talking about. And I think, a devaluation now is a shoo-in. Some of my macro thoughts went back to Edwin Lefebvre. This is how I first came to be interested in the behavior of prices. I had a very good memory for figures. I can remember in detail how the prices had acted on the previous day, just before they went up or down. My fondness for mental arithmetic came in very handy. This weekend, my 22-year-old nephew, Ismail, passed away. He had leukemia. He was a wonderful man, very cool and charming, and I spoke to his father and I didn't know what to say for about 5 minutes, because it's not something that's imaginable, is it? It's rather incomprehensible, burying your son. And that took me to Herodotus. He asked Croesus, "Who told you to attack my land and meet me as an enemy instead of a friend?" The king replied, "It was caused by your good fate and my bad fate. It was the fault of the Greek gods, who with their arrogance encouraged me to march onto your lands. Nobody is mad enough to choose war whilst there is peace. During times of peace, the sons bury their fathers, but in war, it is the fathers who send their sons to the grave." That took me to Richard Kapuscinski's travels with Herodotus. A journey, after all, neither begins in the instant we set out, nor ends when we have reached our doorstep once again. It starts much earlier and is really never over, because the film of memory continues running on inside of us long after we have come to a physical standstill. Indeed, there exists something like a contagion of travel, and the disease is essentially incurable. I like this photograph from the garden. "I'll tell you a secret if you'll believe me," shouts Ahmed Mohammed Alamin, a 30-year-old pharmacist, over raucous cymbals and drums. "During Zikr, we fly to the heavens." Let me leave you with one good quote from Wayne Gretzky. "A good hockey player plays where the puck is. A great hockey player plays where the puck is going to be." Christine Teigen tweeted, "I am Marco Rubio, I am Marco Rubio, I am Marco Rubio, Marco Rubio, Rubio, EO, explodes." This is referencing Mr. Christie taking a huge, Rubio taking a huge hit in the latest debate. The big news over the weekend was North Korea's missile, long-range rocket launch in Seoul on Sunday. Took me to Thomas Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow, when he said a screaming came across the sky. And I go back to my article in 2010, when I said, "Far away in distant lands lies the Hermit kingdom. They all have tiny little hands like the elves and the shoemaker." Put up a photograph of an object believed to be the North Korean rocket seen from China. Going back to Thomas Pynchon, But it is a curve each of them feels unmistakably. It is the parabola. They must have guessed once or twice, guessed and refused to believe that everything always collectively had been moving toward that purified shape latent in the sky, that shape of no surprise, no second chance, no return. Yet they do move forever under it, reserved for its own black and white bad news, certainly as it were the rainbow, and they its children. This country, and I was referring to North Korea, has nuclear weapons, and on its border with its neighbor South Korea sit 25,000 American soldiers. In the same article from 2010, I said the media keeps chanting like a mantra, China will rein North Korea in. It is not in their interests to have a mad dog like North Korea as an ally. And whether it's the BBC, the New York Times, or Radio France, I venture this is an embedded narrative fallacy, and that most Western commentators are apparently popping quaaludes. Let me tell you why China is taking a more forward position, particularly in Asia, it's near abroad. I believe North Korea is the perfect instrument, the attack dog for China to show those who choose to operate outside their sphere of influence that there will be a price to pay. I venture that the Chinese are quite happy to see those 25,000 US soldiers run right into the sea. And we need to grow up as the media does the media, and see it for what it is. Now they're talking about deploying THAAD to the Korean Peninsula. It will only be operated against North Korea, said a senior official at the South Korean Defense Ministry, and I concluded by saying it will be pointed at China. And the US pivot to Asia is biting China harder. The pivot to Asia bears its fangs was something I wrote in 2013 in December, when I said, given that the trajectory is one of gradual erosion of that decisive advantage that the US currently holds, leads me to the view that the pivot to Asia has a logic and a momentum of its own. Therefore, I see the US being increasingly determined to press its advantage. One might even posit that calming down the Iranian front allows the US to better concentrate its energies on the pivot to Asia. Moving to Syria, this is not the end of the war, but could be the beginning of the end, with Assad, Russia, Hezbollah and Iran as the biggest winners. The loss of Aleppo to government forces would represent a potentially decisive blow to the rebellion against President Assad. Aleppo is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. It has been inhabited since perhaps as early as the 6th millennium BC. Let me put up a photograph of the Grand Mosque in Aleppo, and then refer you to an article I came across in Counter Punch by a fellow called Mike Whitney. Used the situation in Eastern Oregon to assess the rationality of these demands under the current circumstance. He explained, to appreciate how ridiculous these demands are, one would have to imagine a similar scenario taking place in the United States. Let's say, for example, that Amon Bundy, the crackpot leader of the armed militia that seized the federal wildlife refuge in Eastern Oregon, demanded that the FBI and all other federal agents vamoose while the UN convened negotiations between his representatives and the Obama administration for the establishment of a transitional government that would remove Obama from power after 18 months while rewriting the Constitution so it better reflected the far-right political and religious convictions of Bundy and his gaggle of ne'er-do-well followers. Does that seem like a reasonable proposition to you? This is the context in which the current talks are being held, Is it any wonder why Moscow doesn't take the charade seriously? It's a joke. Saudi General Ahmed Asseri said the kingdom is ready to participate in any ground operation that the US-led coalition may agree to carry out in Syria. On Friday, Defense Secretary Ashton Carter welcomed Riyadh's willingness to send combat troops to Syria, saying, "That kind of news is very welcome. I look forward to discussing it with the Saudi Defense Minister Mohammed bin Salman next week. That and other kinds of contributions that Saudi Arabia can make." John Kerry blames the opposition for continued Syrian bombing, tells Syrian aid workers hours after the Geneva peace talks fell apart that the country should expect another 3 months of bombing that would decimate the opposition. He said, "Don't blame me, go and blame your opposition," one of the aid workers who asked to remain anonymous to protect her organization told the Middle East Eye. "What do you want me to do? Go to war with Russia? Is that what you want?" So clearly, as I was saying, facts have been shifted. The government is on the front foot, and I think they're not going to let up. We have a photograph of US Secretary of State John Kerry addressing delegates at the Supporting Syria Donor Conference on Thursday. Reuters is asking, is it time for the United States to dump Saudi Arabia? That article is on Rich Wrap-Ups if you care to have a read. Over the weekend, 4 of Russia's newest and most sophisticated military aircraft, the Su-35 Flanker E, arrived at the Russian air base of Latakia in Syria. Obviously, that air superiority is pointed at Turkey to warn them off. The Turkish army has confiscated 700 Parrots, 294 budgerigars on the border with Syria, apparently. Have a look at this chart of German 10-year yields and think of how the euro continues to rally, notwithstanding a very low rate structure. Let's move on to the currency markets. The euro is at 111.36, dollar index 96.96, Japanese yen 117.40. Climbed 3.7% last week in its strongest performance since July 2009. Swissy 0.9934, the pound 145.19, Aussie 0.7095, India rupee 67.855, South Korean won 1206.44, Rial 319.32, Egyptian pound 784.42, and the rand just below 16, and it's always a good sell just below 16. Let me put up a 1-month chart of the dollar index, big fall in the dollar, and I think that's all about concerns that the Chinese are going to devalue, more than concerns about the US economy. Euro dollar, put up a 1-month chart of that. That's had a very strong month as well, as you can see. In dollar yen, look how it reversed Kuroda's move, and we're back at around 117.42. Where should Barclays be in 2020? Barua asked in the note. A pure play UK retail and commercial franchise with the best technology platform in Europe, with Africa gone and the US investment bank carved out. Gold was last trading at 11 at 65.50. It's had a storming run, and that's all been on market weakness and geopolitical concerns. Crude oil, $30.98. Last time I checked, Javier Blas tweeted this: the distance between Saudi Arabia and Venezuela in oil and OPEC in a single photo. Drown your oil, gold and equities sorrows with a whiskey. The rare whiskey Apex 1000 Index is advancing while commodity and equity assets are bruising investors. The supply of older vintages is becoming scanter and more fiercely fought by wealthy collectors. A bottle distilled in the 1920s averages more than £7,000 at UK auction. Let's move on to Africa. The Shabab have upped their game, said one former military official who works in Somalia. The American official said Wednesday that an explosion on a Somali jetliner that punched a 3-foot hole through its fuselage in mid-air and killed one passenger was most likely caused by a bomb. Their preliminary assessment heightened fears that the Shabab militant group in Somalia suspected in the explosion had figured out a way to plant the bomb in a plane. 4 people were killed in Burundi on Saturday night, including a child selling boiled eggs at a bar, when 3 grenades hit the capital, Bujumbura, residents said. South African oil shares down just 1.86% this year. Gold prices probably supporting that index. Dollar rand, I'll put up a 1-month chart. I think it's a great sell below 16. Nigerian oil share down 17.95% this year, having a torrid time. And the Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index down 1.14% year to date. The FT carried an article at the back end of last week, Kenya, a rare bright spot in EM gloom. Looking for a winner from the oil price slump, Kenya could well be a prime candidate in the emerging world at least. The rout is claimed a swathe of well-documented victims from recession-hit Brazil, Russia and Venezuela, to the badly held Nigeria and Azerbaijan and the challenged Gulf states. Kenya, with a rapidly falling current account deficit, its first quarterly budget surplus for at least 5 years, and solid economic growth, could be one of the less heralded beneficiaries of the crash in energy prices. Kenya is one of the few large African economies that is likely to perform well in 2016. As a net energy importer, it will continue to benefit from low prices this year, says John Ashbourne. Charles Robertson, who I met a couple of weeks back, lauds the 45 million strong country's remarkable improvement in government finances. Much of the credit can be laid at the door of the tumbling oil price. Between 2011 and 2015, Kenya's annual fossil fuel import bill was running at about 350 billion shillings. With oil at $30 a barrel, this could drop to 115 billion in 2016. This is equivalent to a decline from 7% of GDP in 2013 to 4.1% in 2015, and potentially as little as 1.6% in 2015. Oil and fuel accounted for 12% of imports in September, compared to a quarter or a third a few years ago. That's a huge saving. As a result, Kenya's current account deficit fell to a 5-year low of 5.4% of GDP in the third quarter of 2015. Then talking about geothermal, saying it's clever, they're using their own natural resources to good effect, and it happens to be green energy as well, so it ticks a lot of boxes. This is the geothermal story, which Albert Muga and Teigen have been pursuing. Supplementary budget later this month is likely to cut this deficit still further, despite elections being just a year away. Mr. Robertson says any ability to send a signal to the outside world and the credit rating agencies that Kenya is still targeting a smaller deficit is a positive. Growth will hit 5.8% in 2015 and probably 6% in 2016. So a pretty strong story coming out of there, and I wrote about this on the 11th of January when I spoke about there is a massive trend change occurring in front of our eyes in what was a previously intractable problem, the perennial current account deficits. My piece over the weekend is called Kenya and East Africa on the up as the rest of sub-Saharan Africa slumps. For a while I've been saying that Kenya and East Africa looks like a bright star in what increasingly looks like a darkening sub-Saharan African sky. The shilling has been Teflon since October, and its performance is a signal in the noise. With the exception of South Sudan, it's going to take decades for this leadership to get it, and Burundi, where the African Union blinked this region is shining bright. Kenya is expected to post a 6% GDP handle in 2016, Tanzania a 7% handle, Uganda around 5%, Ethiopia, even with a drought that has scorched farmlands, probably 80%, and the DR Congo with a more intrepid Kenyan corporates are stealing a march, somewhere around 9%. Meanwhile, Nigeria, the biggest economy in sub-Saharan Africa, will surely contract in 2016, and not least because its president is determined not to devalue the naira. The curve of history from Soros skinning the Bank of England in 1992 to the Mexican peso crisis in 1994 to the Thai baht crisis in 1998 and many more too numerous to mention confirm that maintaining an artificial foreign exchange rate is a fool's errand and eventually carries the risk that the breakdown spirals out of control and can become seriously disorderly. The official naira rate is just below 200 to the dollar, but no one is holding any store by that price, and that's why absolutely no one is putting any more money in Nigeria, because they all know when the haircut is finally imposed, it's going to be a big one. I find it just extraordinary that such a brilliant president would risk it all on a bet on a single number in a game of roulette. Those are the odds. South Africa, which is the second biggest economy in sub-Saharan Africa, will also contract to be at 0% GDP this year. Here again, the David Van Rooyen interlude at the finance ministry was a step too far. A 10% fall in the currency in a single hour, the Rand flash crash, confirms the complete loss of any credibility that President Zuma might have had. Barclays PLC is desperately seeking the Africa exit button, and the reasons are around SA volatility. The third biggest economy in SSA is Angola. Here we are in uncharted territory and possibly revolutionary territory. The currency, whose official rate is about 155 to the dollar, is trading at 400 on the black market. When it comes to sub-Saharan Africa, the markets are the message. The venerable FT headlined an article last week, Kenya a rare bright spot in the EM gloom. Looking for a winner from the oil price slump, Kenya could well be a prime candidate in the emerging world at least. I have already mentioned that the trend change in the perennial current account deficit, and I was quoting what Charlie was quoting, but I've already spoken about this before. FT also noted that exports rose 24% year-on-year in shilling terms, largely thanks apparently to a 58% jump in the value of tea exports as prices rose. And I said this is another lucky break. Kenya has seen its rainfall increase as a byproduct of the El Nino phenomenon. Interestingly, the soft commodities complex has held its value and has not been a part of the extraordinary and non-linear price collapse witnessed in oil and other industrial commodities. In my experience, when Kenya's farm economy performs, it has a big pull effect on the whole economy. The stock market turned higher last week, and what's clear is that Kenyan asset prices have upside. BAT is facing demands that it be investigated by the US Department of Justice following allegations that it engaged in widespread bribery of politicians and policymakers in Africa. Any corporation that enjoys the benefits of our stock exchange must comply with our anti-bribery laws. I'll put up a link for BAT's share price, which has been remarkably resilient since this whole story broke. Capital Markets Authority asks TransCentury to disclose its debt settlement plan, tell the public how it intends to settle 8 billion shillings of debt that falls due in 2 months. Its current market capitalization is 1.976 billion shillings. They've got to redeem about 10 billion shillings worth of bonds. Nairobi All Share had a good week last week, closed now, it's just down 2.96% year to date, and I've spoken about why I feel bullish about that. And then if you get a chance, I met two photographers, Tom Van Das and Nicholas Weisenberg, and I put up 3 photographs. Tell me what you think, because I'm normally quite shy about this kind of thing, but they were really tremendously articulate and getting me relaxed. I quite like these photos. ICPAC says Siano, Jonathan Siano, is to remain its chairman, committee chair until further Uchumi investigations, and I concluded by saying it's a prima facie case, and dilly-dallying is going to denude ICPAC's credentials. Once again, thank you for stopping by.